what prepared you for that role? Like, were you ready to work in tech? Were you ready to work alongside one of the most successful CEOs? Like, what did you do? Like, what was kind of your role
Mhm.
and what helped you prepare for that? And also not be scared. Like, if I was not a tech background and I all of a sudden got this role at this like fast growing and like very high
Mhm.
pressure company, I would be terrified. So kind of what helped you with that role?
Honestly, I think my naivete helped me a lot in the beginning. In the interview process, had I fully understood what my job would entail, I would have been appropriately terrified. But because I didn't fully understand what I was going to be stepping into, I came with a lot of confidence. Like, I'm a smart person. I work really, really hard. I learn fast. And I'm a bit of a chameleon. I can deal with difficult personalities really easily and get them to warm up to me pretty quickly. So I was confident that I could figure it out. It wasn't until about a month or so into getting that job that I became appropriately terrified and realized, oh my gosh, I don't have any of the core skills to do this job. So I'd been hired to join an existing support team for Jeff. He had 3 people in his C-suite. So he had his office, and the rest of us were kind of in this big executive suite. My manager was John Connors, who still is chief of staff for Jeff Bezos today, 19 years later. And John taught me the ropes. So he was my mentor. He was the one I could go to because tech has this, it has its own language. You go in there and you're literally like, what? You don't understand what or who or what they're talking about. There's lots of acronyms and very specific terminology. And there's all these big players that weren't yet kind of global names. And so I had this notebook on my desk that first year where I just kept track of everything I did not understand, what that term meant, who this person was, what we were trying to launch. And so I would go to John with these little sanity checks while I was learning kind of the ropes of technology. But I think the most important part in this crazy environment I found myself in was because it was the birth of the internet and we were inventing e-commerce. I saw around me, even though I was the junior most person in the entire company, probably that whole first year, I watched these senior vice presidents who were hired to expand into Japan or launch, beyond books, we were going to jewelry or sportswear and music. I watched these senior vice presidents doing things they had no idea how to do because no one had ever done it before. So it gave me permission to just ask smart questions, gather data, make some mistakes, learn really fast, and try again. Because even at the most sophisticated expert level of the company, they were doing that too. Had I joined the company a couple years later, I think I probably wouldn't have been as brave as I ended up being, just because I saw that same behavior being modeled at the very, very top. And it was a culture that not only allowed, but demanded for that kind of learning curve. And so I was in good company. That really
Yeah.
helped.
You seem like a very confident person, and like, especially back then, you also seemed very confident even though you might not have had all of the experience. How do you develop that confidence? Because I think, yes, some people are born with confidence, but I think a lot of it is practice too. And I think that confidence is what lands people jobs, it's what grants opportunities, it's what helps people take those leaps. So what are
Mm.
some tips that have made you become more of a confident person?
If you had asked me as a teenager, are you a confident person? I would have said no. I think that would be a misjudgment on my part, but that would have been my answer because I mistook my timidity to be not confident. But that wasn't that, those two things aren't necessarily the same. I'm not timid now because now I'm definitely in my area of expertise. I have a lot of experience behind me, which gives you confidence in those moments of, I don't like to call it imposter syndrome. I call it imposter moments because it's not a permanent diagnosis. You can have this like, oh, how did I get at this table? Or why on earth did he hire me for this job? But I think it's honestly those struggles that I had as a teenager of lacking that bravery to raise my hand or to volunteer for something where I might fail in front of people whose opinions I care about. I think it's because I wasn't born with any one particular exceptional skill or talent. I had to learn to work really hard to compensate for that because my goals have always been really, really big. That just came naturally. I wanted to do something that really matters with my life, but I wasn't particularly exceptional. And so I learned step by step of like, I would be in the AP classes in high school. And I would always be worried that I felt like I had to study twice as hard as anyone else in my class to get the same grade. But that was such a gift because I learned that I could trust myself to ask the right questions, to seek out help and mentorship when I really needed it, and that I could trust myself to figure out hard things. I had done that over and over again. So even very early in my career, when I didn't have a lot of working experience, I thought, okay, let me treat my job like school. I know how to do school. And so if you take something that is a natural talent of yours and you build on that line upon line, I think that's the formula for creating some confidence. When you know you can ask the right questions, you can work really hard, you care more about it than anyone around you, and you seek out those mentors so that you don't have to learn everything the hard way. That can be a nice formula for building that confidence, especially early in your life or early in your career.
Yeah, that your story reminds me so much of myself because
Oh,
I feel the exact same way. Like I am not exceptional at, a certain skill or a certain subject in school. I was always the one that had to study longer to get the good grade rather than just like studying for an hour and all of a sudden getting, an A. Like that was not me. I definitely had to put in the work. And but I always had these dreams of I want to be successful. I want to own my own business. I want to start
yeah.
XYZ. And that was always something that I had. So I always knew I had to work for it because I knew it wasn't going to come just natural or easy to me. And I think that's
And
actually a perk, like you said.
yes, I think so too. And I've heard you share on this podcast before, Natalie, that your experience in starting with YouTube, you also had to be willing to be misunderstood for a while. You were doing something that no one around you was doing, like being a YouTuber wasn't even a term yet. And your peers weren't immediately receptive to that. They thought, and so I think that's kind of the bravery of you had this thing that you felt passionate about so much so that you were willing to do it even when no one was watching and your peers didn't understand what you were doing. But you built on that. You built a skill set and gave yourself permission to just try something that no one around you was doing. And I think that is true entrepreneurship. And I really want people out there listening, whether that's maybe sketching in a notebook or writing a story or doing something that no one in your social circle is doing, that can be an element, even when we're not like yet at the perfectionist end of our story level of our skills. I just think that you're such a great example of that.